So we talked before about the two types of inflation, right? We talked about our demand pull and our cost push inflation as being the two types of inflation. In both cases, prices are going up. In one, it's because of a demand increase, and the other one is because of a supply decrease. Well, we can look a little bit more generally about what would cause inflation. So what would, for example, cause that demand for goods and services to increase? So let's look at three causes of inflation. We'll look at economic growth, we'll look at changes to monetary policy, and then changes to employment. All right, so let's start with the first one, which is economic growth. When we talk about economic growth, we're talking about an increase in GDP. Remember, GDP is C plus I plus G plus X minus IM. So GDP could be increasing because government is spending more, because businesses are spending more, because households are spending more. In all these cases, we're seeing the purchase of more goods and services in the economy. Well, if we're buying more stuff, so here's aggregate demand, so the demand for all goods and services, and here's aggregate supply, the total supply of all goods and services. If the economy is booming, then demand for goods and services increases. And when demand for anything increases, we know that it causes prices to increase. And if this is an aggregate demand, aggregate supply curve, then that's the price level, or CPI, to represent prices of all goods. So essentially, demand increases, it makes prices go up, we get inflation. Okay. The second cause of inflation can be related to monetary policy. So monetary policy consists of two parts. It consists of interest rates, and it consists of the money supply. So when we're looking at monetary policy, the Bank of Canada can change interest rates to stimulate the economy or slow it down, to fight inflation or to encourage prices to change. So let's suppose that interest rates go down. Okay, so Bank of Canada decides they want to stimulate the economy, they're going to lower interest rates. Well, if you lower interest rates, there are now more loans to be had, right? Because it's now cheaper to borrow, so more people borrow. Well, who borrows the money at those lower interest rates? Well, households are going to borrow money. They're going to buy houses and cars. Businesses are going to borrow money. They're going to expand. So we're seeing an increase in consumption spending, in investment spending. And of course, if households are buying more stuff and businesses are buying more stuff, then that means that there's more demand for goods and services. And we're back to our graph we saw before, where aggregate demand increases or shifts to the right. And we know when there's more demand for anything, it makes prices go up. So when interest rates go down, demand increases, prices go up, we get inflation. Well, monetary policy is interest rates, it's also changing the money supply. So we could start by printing more money. Could change the amount of money in circulation. So the Bank of Canada decides to print more money. There's more money chasing the same goods. Okay. Well, when there's more money chasing the same goods, so everybody's flush with cash, you, your mother, your brother, the bank, they all have lots of money in their pockets. Well, if we all have lots of money, then how can we make more money? Well, we could lend it out. So what happens is when there's more money out there, then it drives down interest rates. We're going to look at exactly how that works later this semester. But there's more money chasing the same goods. Everyone's flush with cash. They're eager to lend it out. And that drives down the interest rates, which of course makes consumption spending and investment spending go up, which makes demand do what? Go up, which makes prices go up. Okay? So lowering interest rates or increasing the money supply will both cause inflation. Okay? Now, the third scenario we have is a change in employment, the number of jobs. So let's look at that scenario here. Let's just create a new page. All right, so let's suppose that the unemployment rate just get our black pen here. Let's suppose the unemployment rate goes down. All right, so unemployment rate has fallen. More of us have jobs. We're working. Okay. Well, if the unemployment rate has fallen, then that means when you go to look for people to hire, you have less potential workers to choose from. Right? So who do you hire? Well, if you have less people to choose from, you're looking for the best person, but they're hard to find. So how do you convince them to come work for your business? Or let's say that you have a good employee, how do you keep them from going away? Well, when the unemployment rate falls, wages go up as we try to keep the good worker. If wages increase, well, here's demand, here's supply. For businesses, when wages increase, it's going to cost businesses more to make the same goods. So supply will decrease and it drives up the price. So cost to business increases. Which means supply decreases and we have prices increasing. Okay. Now, we also know that when prices go up, that makes interest rates do what? According to the Fisher effect, if we anticipate inflation, the nominal interest rate is going to go up. And when this happens, then that means households will buy less cars and less houses, businesses will not expand, so investment spending and consumption spending go down, which means there's less demand for goods and services, right? Less spending. And when that demand decreases, well, when demand decreases, what does that do to the price? It makes the price fall. So what we see here is the business cycle, that instability in the market. Okay, we can see how we get to inflation when the unemployment rate is low, and this aligns with what we saw with the Phillips curve. Low unemployment, we're all buying things, prices go up, and we know that when prices go up, interest rates go up, spending goes down, and that makes prices fall back again. So we get that instability in the market. Which is why, in our previous video, we found that business cycles were one of the costs of inflation. And so we can see that here now, that instability in the market it creates. And so this cartoon is saying, please stand by for a series of tones. The first one says the recession has ended. The second one indicates things are great. And the third one says we're back to a recession. So the idea is things are good, things are bad, things are back to good. We constantly see this ebb and flow in the economy. So when we look at our business cycle, we can actually label the parts of the business cycle. Long term, we see economic growth. We saw that at the beginning of the in one of the first videos looking at economic growth, right? For the most part, Canada's has seen economic growth. But we're also seeing instability when we start to look at it. We take out the growth trend. So if we take out the growth trend, then we can see the business cycle. And the business cycle has a period. Let's try that again. The business cycle has a period of expansion, meets a peak, a period of contraction, a trough, and then is right back to expanding again. During that period of expansion, economy is growing, demand is increasing, prices are going up, unemployment is going down. We reach a peak, and then we start to see unemployment increase, prices fall, we hit a trough, and then we're back again. Within these business cycles, we are technically in a recession if we have 2 quarters or half a year of declining real GDP. So it's not just about prices falling, but it's about producing less goods. So it's real GDP. A more common measurement that we're starting to see is to measure a recession based on what's happening to the unemployment rate. So if you're seeing a 1.5% increase in unemployment, then we're saying you're officially in a recession. The reason that we're seeing a change to this definition from the old one is, what if you are just shy of 2 quarters or just shy of half a year? Let's say 5 months of declining real GDP. So as an economy, we're producing less stuff over 5 months. Then there's a little uptick. Christmas, people are buying more stuff. We need to make a little bit more, but then we're right back to declining real GDP again. So the problem with this 2 quarters definition of real GDP is that there could be a very short-term positive growth in the economy, then you're right back at it, and under the definition, you're not in a recession. Under the new definition, you could still be in a recession. A depression, like the Great Depression, is when you have 2 years of declining real GDP. And the only time we've been in a depression is in 1929 to 1932 was the Great Depression. The closest the U.S. has been to the Great Depression was the recession for 2008, 2009. For us, it wasn't that bad. The idea of business cycles has been around for a really long time. In fact, in 1875, there was a guy named William Stanley Jevons, and he was trying to explain this instability in the market, these business cycles that he was seeing. And at the time, society was mostly an agrarian society. That is, most people farmed. And so William Stanley Jevons created what has been called the sunspot theory. So he was trying to explain why at about every 11 years we see a recession. And so in an agrarian society, your economy contracts when you have poor farming, when there's a drought or disaster or something that produces very little crop that year. And so he had tied it to sunspots. The idea is that when there are a lot of solar flares, it's very hot, there tends to be droughts. And in years there's not solar flares, it tends to be cooler and rainier. And so he basically attributed business cycles to what the sun was doing. Now, today, only about 2% of our population works in farming, so we can't really blame business cycles on the sun. But as we've seen in this video, we can see a bit of where that instability in the market comes from. So here you can see long-term growth in Canada. The little dips, of course, are showing you the recessions. If we take out the long-term trend, you can now see that instability in the market. So now you can start to see those business cycles. You can see expansion, peak, contraction, trough, repeat. Here you can see those business cycles for multiple countries. Because of globalization, because we buy so many of our materials and supplies from other countries and we sell our finished products to other countries, today when one country is in a recession, most other countries are as well. So in 2008, 2009, most of the world saw a declining gross domestic product.